Hello, 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 and welcome everyone. We are so glad to have you with us at the Neon Valley Media Club.
Welcome back.
This is the club where I am trying to talk to the people.
Sorry.
This is the club where we're going to talk about movies, media, and other forms of. See, you threw off my groove. I'm entirely blaming that on. No. This is the episode where we are going. It's not the goddamn episode.
Yeah, it's not as easy as it looks, is it? All right, yeah. See.
This is the show where we recommend to each other a different movie. This week, I recommended you to watch What Dreams May Come.
Yes. For some reason, I kept looking up Where Dreams May Come. I don't know why. 1998?
Yeah, 98.
Believe? Robin Williams.
Lead actor.
Mm-hmm. I didn't recognize the director. He hadn't really done anything that I was too familiar with.
Apparently, he did a lot of horror movies before this. Like, when this came out, people were surprised by it.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I was more surprised by the fact that he didn't make things more heady. Because the way that this movie, the artistic approach, the VFX it uses, this feels like almost like it'd be like a James Cameron or someone who really pushes the limits of...
Yeah.
Because apparently they use effects in this movie that were very, like, ahead of their time.
They won the is it an Academy Award for VFX? I know they won an award for it. Yeah.
They may have won the Oscar for
maybe that's what it is.
Or it might have been the Academy Award though. I can't remember which one. I will say the freaking VFX in this movie are incredible.
Okay. Let's get into our rating before we start talking more about it.
Oh shit, yeah, you're right. Almost totally forgot. Our rating for What Dreams May Come is a 3, 2, 1.
9
6 out of 10.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm even debating it in my head right now.
Okay.
It's closer to a 7 for sure. It's
okay.
It's nowhere near a 5. As we talk about it, maybe you might sway me on a few things.
Okay.
Would you like me to go first since you suggested this movie? I guess
Yes, I would.
Okay. I will say, going into this, I was very excited because it was one movie that had gone under my radar. I had heard of it and kind of knew about it, but I kept confusing it with the movie Walking in Paris, starring Owen Wilson. Just look up the poster for Walking in Paris real quick. And Joseph,
right.
Put them up side by side. Midnight in Paris.
When did this come out?
Like 10 years after What Dreams May Come, like way later. But something about the poster, they morphed into my mind as the same movie. I will say right out of the gate, this is one of the most 90s movies we've watched.
It is very 90s, yeah.
We've watched a couple movies that were made in the 90s, but there's something about the tone of this one that is just like quintessential 90s.
Mm-hmm. Hit a really nice sweet spot for me.
It had that, like, now I think it's cheesy, but in the 90s it was very endearing. It's that kind of soundtrack too that has like the do 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 do, like when good things are happening. There's like it's very common in Jim Carrey movies, like Liar Liar and shit like that. But yeah, it was, the tone was nice. I will say, going into it, I was like, wow, I haven't watched a movie like this in a while. Okay, I think my issues were mainly with the beginning. The beginning is very front-loaded with drama dumping. Like literally 4 people die in the first half an hour of the movie. If not 45 minutes about. Well, okay, that's not the tone though. Right? Like that's just like, okay, Jesus fucking Christ at a certain point. Like I think setting the tone, in my opinion, would have been, the kids' characters are kind of what I struggle with, because I think they're beautifully done in the afterlife when he has to like interact with them as characters, spoilers, we'll get into all that. But when they die at the beginning, that feels like, one, a little rushed, because it's like, well, we don't really get to know them. They kind of have the interaction at breakfast, and it is acted well. It's a nice, good interaction. But when Robin Williams just says, and that's the last time we ever saw them alive, I thought he meant himself. because I knew the movie was about him dying.
Really good twist. It's a really good twist.
It is. I think. Well, that's the thing. If the trailer and everybody going into this knows that Robin Williams dies, obviously, like that's the setup of the movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then yes, it is a good twist. I will agree that it's like, oh shit, the kids died, right? But I think it's just such a serious thing to happen so quickly that I had no emotional engagement with it. I didn't feel bad that like, of course I'm sad that kids died. Like, yeah, but also I didn't see it happen. I think if the car just fucking got nailed out of nowhere, like remember the beginning of, this is the second time I'm bringing this up, I think in like 2 or 3 weeks, Disturbia with Shia LaBeouf, when he's out
yeah,
he's like fishing with his dad, and it's a very sweet, endearing scene, and you're like, oh, and then out of nowhere their car just gets fucking sideswiped by a truck, and then his dad's dead, and it's like, holy shit. Even though you only spent 5 minutes with them, that was impactful. Something about the kids in this one I didn't quite feel.
I felt like part of that was they needed to set up the focus being around him and his wife's relationship. I think sometimes when you introduce kids, there becomes, okay, so they're a key component. And it's not that they don't play a large role, but this, and even by the ending, we really see this is heavily meant to be the story of him and his wife.
Yes.
And so I think to kind of start out with, they're a couple who lost their kids. It's kind of narratively what it wanted to tell.
Yeah. Well, and that's what sucks though, is that later in the movie, I think at the end especially, which we'll talk about, I think it makes me feel like the kids were just a footnote on their relationship. And it's like, yeah, but they were your kids. And it's like, so the movie doesn't, like, I feel like, draw enough attention to their relationship, especially by the end. It kind of feels like the kids don't even really matter. And it's like, oh, well, they're just going to stay dead, which, again, we'll get into that. As I think that's easier to talk about once we have context and stuff.
Yeah.
So, okay, let me, do you want to kind of take us through the beginning of the movie and stuff? Because we've already been talking about some scenes and stuff.
Beginning of the movie, we're kind of now, like, they give us this early introduction, how they met on a boat. They fell in love right away. They had kids. And then, right out the gates, you get hit with the kids die. Yeah. And it's them at the funeral for their children, which I think on my tier counter, no, that wasn't my first one. Okay. I ended up having a tier counter for this movie. Like, all the parent stuff has me so sensitive to that now, because I can finally put myself in their shoes a little bit. So
I can see that.
So it kind of fast forwards a little bit after, I don't know if they said it was 4 years. It was a number of years. Oh yeah, so it was 4 years after that funeral. She is she sells art, art galleries. She does art galleries. And there was a piece she needed. She was freaking out. And he's like, don't worry, I'll stop. I'll go and I'll get that art piece for you.
Which, to point out, I think, again, I think it was on purpose, so I think it's well done. I'm not trying to fault the movie and act like, oh, they didn't even mean to do this, so I don't think it's good. No, I in that beginning, she calls and she says, I'm having a breakdown. And he says, calm down, breathe. And then you assume it's about the children, but then she goes, I can't get the painting. And so it's like a little twist on, like, okay, well, have they moved like, they have grown past the children. I'm sure they're not, and not in a bad way. It's been 4 years.
Yeah.
You know,
it's they're able to move forward with their life at this point.
Yeah. And of course there is the undertone that she's also stressed because of the, it's like, yes, it's about the art, but it's like, oh, but deeper, she's just upset and stressed. You kind of get that sense too. Yeah, I actually don't have many notes for that first beginning. All I said was the tone. I did say it feels rushed. And then honestly, I didn't have another note until Robin Williams dies.
My first couple notes was I actually really liked the opening scene on the boat. It was very
great.
Robin Williams dialogue. I like that. I did think it was funny at their wedding. He's walking her down the aisle, which I think was just for like aesthetic for like the.
Thank you. I'm not crazy. I saw that too, and I was like, "Is that what? That's not how it works." What?
I think it was for the shot. They're like, "This would look really good," and they're like, "That's fine."
I know. But I actually think it's cuter if it was realistic, because you're not thinking, because like if she's walking with her dad and trips and then he's at the end of the aisle and kind of laughs, they can do the same joke, but for some reason they fuck that up. I don't get that. That's so weird. I don't know. It
didn't get a perfect 10, but it got a high score for me. So
yeah, that's not enough to ruin a movie. I just thought that was weird. I was like, well, that's a choice.
This movie does also a good job of, it'll do cutaways to like the past and them talking with the kids. And one of the cutaways they do is talking about them having to put down their dog.
Oh yeah, that was
which was discussion. Super. I think that was no, not First Set of Tears. Well, I think this came after that first part, but
yeah, because that's later in the movie, I believe.
Yeah. The movie does a good job of, I think, having a real dialogue between people. Real situations, dealing with things like grief.
The scenes are great. Yeah, the dialogue, the interactions, they're very real. They feel real. Like, they can be cheesy, but again, cheesy in a way that's like, it's a story. So they're trying to convey a feeling and a message. Like, yes, that's fine. I actually don't like the order in which they show it. I don't like the flashbacks. I kind of wish we would have spent all of those moments with the kids before they died. I get that would have made the movie... like, I don't know. I feel like there's just a different edited version of this movie that would have sat with me better, where the flashbacks kept pulling me out. I actually mentioned, one of my next notes was, I think the non-chronological order of the movie isn't helping, because I'm being thrown in a lot of different directions. Like, it's like, you know, they're young, they meet, then they're older, they have kids die. Then we have flashbacks, then he dies, then we have more flashbacks, and then it's like keeping even though I know the order of things happening, it's still just a little bit jarring, where it's like, I didn't have reference to feel bad about the kids dying until halfway through the movie. Because Robin Williams having that interaction with his son and being like, you got to get your shit together and all this stuff, and the son being like, I'm not like you, that's a beautiful moment.
Oh God, yeah, such a real scene.
Yeah, and it works really well. I guess I just wished it would have happened before the drama of the first 20 minutes, because again, it felt like the first 20 minutes was like, we got to get to Robin Williams being dead.
So we're at the 4 years later, he's talking to his wife on the phone saying, I'll go pick up the piece of art for you. So as he goes, there is a big traffic accident that happens on the freeway, in the bridge. He sees that somebody was hit really badly, like in their car, and he runs over to check on them.
Really well done, by the way. The accident, like for a 90s movie, no VFX, like that was...
They did a fantastic job. And what ends up happening is a car comes crashing in, hits, and he gets taken out and he dies. And so right off the bat, he's dead. And Amanda, because we were watching this together, she had pointed it out too, that in the funeral scene for him, the priest is like, this woman who's lost not only her husband, but also both her kids. It's like, you probably don't need to bring that up. I think she and everyone who knows here. Yeah, it's like, you probably didn't need to well, that's what that part.
But that's how I feel about the movie, is I feel like it's like, oh my God, like, okay, like, Jesus Christ.
They're like, we're going to make sure you people cry.
Yeah, trauma dump, you know.
And so the first time I had cried was... like the first time where it was like actually like
you feel the swelling. Oh, and I did swell up like twice in this movie. I'll admit.
Is he goes over and he touches her as a ghost while they're at the church, and you see she's kind of connected to that, and I was just like, there we go, here we go.
Yeah, that was pretty good. I didn't tear up, but it was good. I didn't hate their interactions, and I think there's a moment I liked the sentiment that Cuba Gooding Jr., his character gives him, where he's like, you don't have to be scared. And he's like, scared? He says, yeah, you're not disappearing. You're just dead. I actually felt an odd comfort in that line.
That conversation when he's initially like trying to figure out what's going on. Of course he could see who's a dog. Like, and not just that, the whole idea of when he first dies, he doesn't see himself yet. It's almost just kind of like you get the camera that's like going through the rooms of his house.
Yeah, and it was a little like experimental. I liked that.
and you hear Cuba Gooding Jr.'s voice, who is somebody in the life that was like his kind of mentor. He calls
Yeah.
Doc, and he's kind of explaining to him what's going on. And again, to your point, he's like, you're not gone. And he slowly, as he begins to accept the things he's being told, he becomes to see himself.
Mm.
And then you go from just hearing Cuba Gooding Jr.'s voice to now you're seeing like a blurry figure. And there was actually a really good joke where I think he's looking at a painting that was really blurry. And he's like, "Oh, it looks familiar,"
Yeah.
because he's still like really. And I'm like, I like the Robin Williams still, that charisma kind
Yeah,
of
it was still in
funny.
there a bit. Which, funny enough, I did see reviews for this movie from early, like when it came out in the 90s, of people saying they couldn't take Robin Williams seriously, which is funny because, like, I guess I can kind of understand if you're in, like, it's 1998 and all you know Robin Williams for is like Mrs. Doubtfire, Jack, like all these movies where he's a very crazy over Aladdin. And then
Mhm.
it's like you watch a very serious movie with him in it. I think people had the same reaction to Jim Carrey when he tried to do Eternal Sunshine. They were just like,
Mhm.
I can't take him seriously. But now it's a classic. Like
It's
nobody looks back at
yeah,
Eternal and goes, "Oh, Jim Carrey's an awful choice." And same thing with this. I think Robin Williams is the perfect choice of the
yep.
charismatic father who loves his wife. Like, do they dig in the whole angle of him loving his wife like a lot? Yes. But it never really feels disingenuous. Like
Yeah, it
it,
feels like how that character would be.
yeah, I would hate hanging out with them. They're the type of couple that you'd be like, "Oh, Jesus Christ, guys. Been together for 50 years. Calm down." No, but
Yep.
it is funny. Like it doesn't feel disingenuous, but it does feel like they have to really hammer it in like we love each other. But again, it's not just for the sake of trauma when they die. They do try to wrap that into the greater story when it comes to like soulmates and things like
Mhm.
that in the greater grand scheme of things. So I do appreciate that. And I liked the disorienting vibe when he dies, but
Yeah.
I did feel like it was a little messy. Like again, upon reflection, I like the idea of death being chaotic because like he's in a bed and he's like, "Are you operating on me, Doc?" He's like, "Oh," he's like a very distant voice, and then he
Mhm.
flashes somewhere else, and then he flashes home, and it's very like disjointed and disconnected. But then he just starts calling the guy Doc without any confirmation that it is a doctor and that kind of
Mhm.
threw like there were little things that I felt like I believe this is based off a book. I may be wrong.
Yes. Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. I think it was based off a book.
I have a feeling that this is a case of the visual
Mhm.
trying to match what the book was conveying and
Mhm.
maybe not doing like the best job. Like it's doing a
Mhm.
good job. Like I still think it's doing a good job, but I can tell I'm almost like if I was reading this, I think your imagination would fill the gaps a lot better than what the
I see
movie
what you're saying. Okay.
conveys to you. And he is able to interact with her a bit. And for a minute, I was getting upset because I was just like, leave her alone. What are you doing? I don't care how much you love her.
You're making it harder for her to,
Yeah.
and I love that they actually call that out.
I have the line here. He says, "Reality is it's over when you stop wanting to hurt her." All right. So is he in heaven yet?
Yes. So now I think it's after the point, because again we kind of talked about how there's moments where like she's writing something and he's trying to guide her, and again it's causing her more pain.
That made me so uncomfortable. Yeah, I know. I again, and I think it's supposed to, but
Exactly.
in the moment, I thought they were trying to do a Patrick Swayze ghost thing, and I was like, this is not working. This is scary. But yeah, it's kind of meant to be.
Yep. And so he finally kind of gets to the point where he realizes, okay, I think I do need to let you go and go on my path and on my way. Which again, I also like that kind of idea where he had just died. He's not really ready to accept it yet, but as he starts to accept it, he moves into the next thing. And I think one of like the first thing that happens is he's greeted by his dog. And
Yeah.
and I love the line where he says, I really screwed up and went to dog heaven.
Yeah. Oh, I thought he said they screwed up.
Oh no,
Oh,
I think
but
he
no,
said I
I
really
really
screwed
screwed
up
up. That's funnier.
and went to dog heaven. And that was
Yeah.
my second set of tears, was seeing him reunite with his dog.
Oh yeah, that was pretty okay. That's fair. Again, I think the '90s cheese of it. I don't like the swelling orchestra and the angle of the dog jumping over the flowers. It almost was like too much where I didn't like, yes, I'm sitting there like, that's really sweet. That's really cute.
Yeah.
I didn't like feel that like emotion in those moments, just specifically, I will say. But yeah, that was really nice. And again, that the effects of the paint are like revolutionary.
It looks so good. I was surprised. I was like, there's maybe certain elements of this movie that don't hold up as well
Some of
over
the green
time.
screen was pretty rough in parts.
But the paint imagery, I thought that looked amazing.
Yeah, it's really good. Like, it's funny to think that now it's probably a very simple effect that people are like, oh, whatever. But at the time, and to think of what they had to do, like they had to build their own programs just to run something like that. You know, it wasn't just a filter in After Effects.
Yep.
So it was really good. This is where I started to get worried that the movie was religious propaganda.
Which funny enough, they never mention a specific religion.
No, they do.
They
say
only make
God.
one reference to God, but they only make the reference like once.
Yeah, I guess you have a point.
Because Cuba Gooding Jr.
But they directly say heaven and hell, and those are two things that are specifically Christianity and Catholicism, I believe. I don't think other religions necessarily have like
that's
like,
fair
in that wording. They may have a variation of a bad place and a good place. And again, the movie wasn't. I'll admit, the movie was not religious propaganda. At the beginning, it felt like it, because it kind of felt like Cuba Gooding Jr.'s character was like, hey, isn't heaven fucking sick? Like, you better be a good person in your life. And then the whole idea where I knew the wife didn't end up in heaven, and I was like, oh, where is this going? Which, I mean, I want to get into this more later as we get into the movie, but I do think that the morals are a little messy in this movie. As far as like human nature, they're messy. So it's kind of like, that may be the point. This is a person's experience. It's their death. It's their life, their love, that type of thing. So they may be experiencing death through a very, very specific lens of like this guy's belief system and you know what I mean? But the way that they kind of like portray the idea of the wife committing suicide and going to hell, but she didn't do anything wrong, but if you try hard enough, you can get her out. But then they also reincarnate at the end, which I kind of hated that. I'll admit, I'll just say that now. I wished that they just stayed in heaven. I bet that they were going to, and then audiences were like, so they're just dead, and got like sad or something. And it's like they had to reincarnate them. I'm making assumptions because I want to make myself feel better. But yeah, that's where it feels messy, is because like they seem to pull from like a bunch of religions and beliefs and can't really focus on one. So for me, it makes the philosophical parts of it and the theological parts of it, like I think too hard about that, and I'm like, this doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, what?
So they're in heaven.
Yes.
So now he's in heaven. He's already seen the paint. Cuba Gooding Jr. comes to him, and this is where he can actually, like, I think, fully see him now, like, as he's like not like corporeal anymore. And that's when he kind of starts, explaining like, this is you, because he's like, this is heaven. He's like, this is your heaven. Like, you're creating this, and even saying like, oh, most people don't have it like this fleshed out already. Like it takes longer. Which again, I kind of like that process of you just died. You're just trying to figure it out. You don't understand. He mentions kind of early on about, oh, where are my kids? And Cuba Gooding Jr.'s character says, oh, well, Doc says, you'll see them when you're ready. Kind of implying that there might be some reason as to why you haven't got to see them yet.
Yeah, that hints more at like the you create your heaven thing, where it's like he keeps pushing himself back. Same with the wife thing, where it's like he couldn't let himself traverse until he was ready to traverse. That makes sense.
And from there, Doc's character starts explaining. So Jesus Christ, so you can really control it and make this world your own. So he like looks up at the painting, and he sees a bird, and he's like, "Can I make it fly?" And he's like, "Yeah." And so he's then able to realize he can control and has this beautiful, really cool painted bird flying through the sky. Cool. It poops on him, which I thought was really funny with I didn't do that.
Yeah.
And Doc's character was like, I did.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah, the way that he's like kind of able to control, he explains like, oh, it's like a joint control, which does tie into the reveal later. Which, because at first that didn't quite make sense to me, where I was just like, oh, that's fucked up. So anybody can just pop into your heaven and fuck with it. If they realize, like, that's not heaven.
Like you're jumping in your Minecraft server, burning the whole thing down. And
exactly. Like trolls still exist in heaven, I bet. Like that's some people's heaven is being a troll, you know?
He says, like, can I make elephants fly? And I just love, like, that.
That felt weird. It was just like, yeah, no shit, dude. What?
Of course you can't. Like, you not see everything else going on?
Everything is paint. Like, what do you mean? Yeah, that was pretty funny.
Also wrote no fall damage because he jumps off of like a really high cliff. Yeah, he's like, I'm gonna try to fly. And again, I like this idea of it. It's like a kid who just has the freedom to do whatever they want, and he's just running and trying things.
And there is like I don't know if it's on purpose, but I think that there's like a rebirth analogy in a way, because Cuba Gooding Jr. literally cuts a vagina in the wall and then they walk through it. And it's like dripping pink goo. Did you notice that? Like, because he's like, and it's literally, it's like in the shape. It's not a circle. I
thought it was a circle. I
thought it has like 2 points. And like they meet, yeah.
I did not realize that.
I think it's supposed to be symbolic in a way. You know what? I'm glad that this movie resonated with you really well, because there are a lot of parts that did. I think I was just being hypercritical of the philosophy behind it. I couldn't help but think deeper about religion and like what the afterlife is, and like instead of just letting the movie guide me with that, I kind of was just critical of like, okay, well, does this make sense? And what happened?
I thought Beast just like jumped on the door.
I didn't hear anything.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'm just going fucking crazy.
But yeah, because I had a note where it kind of doesn't do this as it goes along, and maybe this was just meant to be Robin Williams' entrance into heaven to make him more comfortable, but it felt like Cuba Gooding Jr. just kind of had an answer for every philosophical question. Like, instead of presenting a question and then being like, what does it mean? It was just kind of like presenting a question and then giving him the answer of what it means philosophically. Mm-hmm. Where like the whole thing with like thought and who you are as a person, like I enjoyed that conversation, but by the end of the conversation, I was just supposed to go, Cuban is right. Instead of pondering more of like, well, what is the truth? And, because Cuba kind of makes the point where he's like, well, you're thinking, so that's you. And it's like, okay, well, but what does that mean? Like, so there was like deeper questions they weren't answering, but conveying, I guess, or trying to answer.
And I think maybe part of that is Cuba Gooding Jr. Like they make clear that his character's job is to kind of help souls understand their way, connecting.
Yeah, he's not God.
Yeah, he's not God, but he is meant to be a guide. He's meant to have those answers. And I will say, like, being that it's heaven, I would hope that somebody there understands how things operate, because like you're already at finality, like you're at the end of life. So I would imagine that if anyone is gonna have the answers, it's someone in the afterlife.
Because can I say one thing that about like because I'm interested as more of a religious person, having that connection. How did you feel about the angle where when he asks about God, Cuba's like, oh, he's still up there looking down at us, wondering why we can't hear him? doesn't that kind of aggravate you? Like, wouldn't that kind of be like a tease where it's like, okay, well, is the afterlife just another human experience where we don't really know if God exists? Like that, because that's like, oh, fuck. Like, if that was your whole belief system, and then you're teased in the afterlife of like, oh, well.
I don't know. I think if you died and then you were in that world, it would hard to still be an atheist, is all I'm saying.
That's true. Well, I don't know though. I don't know because like again, there's no physical proof, and that's kind of what I like about the movie. Again, I will say that what I think it does well is not drill in the fact that this is God, like Christianity heaven. You know, like they hint at it, they kind of do, but they don't necessarily outright say it. So I do give it that plus in a sense because if they did, I think that would work in its detriment. You know, but yeah. This is we're not even into the deeper philosophical parts of this movie, but I like how much it's making us talk. I do appreciate that about this movie. Yeah, I do have the VFX are amazing. I have that on here.
Yeah, it's super good, but yeah, it's funny because again, as that religious person, I also would think like I would still say if I understand God the way that I was kind of raised to understand him in the church is he would be so beyond our comprehension that maybe there's no way for us to fully connect and understand him at that level. And maybe that's kind of just the beauty of the creator is he is existence. He is the fact that we exist. And again, not this like dude that's just hanging up in the clouds.
Yeah. That's true. That's fair. Again, I guess that's because I know that you have more of a nuanced take on Christianity. Because I feel like that would not be the take of like a very devout like Christian,
like a devout mainstream
or Catholic. You know?
And it's funny because I consider myself a very like I didn't eat meat today. It's Lent, I consider myself a pretty devout Catholic, but in the sense of I feel very connected to my faith and what I think the teachings that we're supposed to take away from the Bible are, and less about a person just telling us how to the way we're supposed to be. Again, at the end of the day, we were given free will. If that is like our greatest gift, then to believe that everything is predestined and chosen for us, or to believe that by and this is probably maybe controversial for religious people, the thought that praying will have God intervene to fix things for us. It's not to say that like I don't pray that like my surgeries are going to go well like before I'm going to have a surgery, or the same thing for other family. Like I pray that they're safe and taken care of.
Yeah.
But it's almost like I'm putting that love into the universe more than I'm saying I think God is going to come and he's going to make the guy catch the football on fourth down because I'm
or cure the thing you have, you know, or somebody you know has, because then you're just setting yourself up for failure because you're only going to be disappointed if it doesn't get cured. Or it's interesting. I believe that, I have this, obviously I have the same opinion because I am more agnostic, a little more in the middle. Like I don't really know what's out there. I'm very spiritual, but I do not really subscribe to a Catholic or Christian or even like Judeo specific religion. I can't really align myself with those type of things because I don't agree with them fully. So I kind of am in a void of just, I believe in spirituality and shit. I kind of think that prayer is almost became a miscommunication of what a lot of other cultures believe like manifest destiny is. Like I believe it might be a Japanese or Hindu. I don't remember the origins, but the idea of manifest destiny is that if you believe it strong enough, you make it for yourself. You know, if you devote your life and belief a certain thing, then that is reality in a sense. It doesn't mean that if you want a burger and then open your eyes, a burger will appear. It means that if you want a burger, you're going to go get beef, you're going to go get lettuce, you're going to go get buns, and you're going to make a fucking burger. And that's the manifestation because you wanted it and you made it a thing. I think prayer became like a telephone game where it's like somebody trying to explain manifest destiny. And it's like, well, you like, you know, you wish it. And it's like, oh, well, okay, so I just ask God really hard and he'll give it to me. And it's like, no, that's not quite what prayer is meant to be. I think prayer is meant to be your like you should pray for somebody. That means you're putting your effort into helping whatever situation it might be. You know.
Yeah, the closest I've heard that maybe I would agree with more in terms of like the way that prayer would work is like if you pray to be more courageous, you're going to be given more opportunities to be courageous. Like you're not going to get courage. You're going to
Yeah,
get the opportunity to be courageous. And if I was
exactly.
going to say like if there was a way that maybe prayer did work out, like that's how I would perceive it. But to think like, oh, I really need to do well on this test. Oh, again, even for me, right? I'm going into the surgery. I hope things are well, but I don't think it's like he's gonna come and be like, oh, that guy was about to make a mistake, but he did ask really nicely. So
Sometimes though, it is that I guess it's a placebo effect, and I'm not trying to diminish
oh yeah,
belief. This is more of specifically the prayer angle we're talking about. If somebody sits down and goes, God, I really need to pass this test, and then they stop praying, that might, for some reason, give them the kind of feeling of effort to
confidence.
pick up a book and be like, you know what, I'm gonna study tonight. And then they study, and then they pass the test, and then they go, thank you, God. And it's like, yeah, but that prayer is what gave you the confidence to do the thing because and in that itself, is that religion? Is that not the same thing? You know, like,
Yeah, like that's what I think that's a good example of like the power of prayer. I think the power of prayer absolutely exists, but again, I think the idea of you're just asking him to do things for you and he's
yeah.
going to intervene in your life because you are more holy and that like than anyone else and you go to church twice on Sundays.
Yeah.
I don't think it works that way.
Yeah, like I've learned, especially as we got older, that brains are just so malleable and shiftable and changeable more than we realize because we're at the forefront of it. So we think we're the ones making the decisions. But in reality, it's your brain having a bunch of connecting thoughts that goes, this is the right choice. And we can sometimes convince ourselves of things that we could, never imagine. Like, this is a silly example, but like recently I had a kind of spark to do a short story again. So I started writing.
Oh, nice.
And I found a video on YouTube called Writing Sessions. And it's these spurts of sessions. I think they have similar videos for studies where it's like soundscapes and they do it for about a half an hour and then they do a 5-minute break and then they have another half an hour and it's like 2 hours long or something. And I was originally put it on and I was like, this is fucking stupid. It's like, what this video is going to trick me into fucking just sitting here and writing. Dude, it worked. Like the second I put the video on, because I was writing a story where I was in like the beginning of it is supposed to be in like kind of a like not a haunted mansion, but a mansion. So this video I found was immersive mansion story writing session. And it literally has like creaking wood and you hear the wind.
Oh.
And it has like slightly
Ambiance.
piano music playing in the background and like a ghoul will pass by every once in a while. And I was sitting there like, oh yeah, uh-huh. Yeah, and then the second the break bell rang, I was like, all right, take a break, go grab a drink, come back. Oh, 5 minutes are up, get back to writing. And it was just like, so I know this is a silly thing to connect because it might not sound like they do, but I think that's just the power of not convincing. What's the word I'm looking for? It's suggestion. The power of suggestion. There is a air of that in religion. That's kind of like we're saying the power of prayer can be the power of suggestion, where it's like if you pray strong enough, well, you've kind of convinced yourself that that's the thing that needs to get done, and that's the thing that gives you the drive to get it done. It's not like a magical being zapping some magic potion in front of you that does the thing. Wow, we went on a whole religious tangent there.
We did, but at least it was a focus. Like the entire time, it was still having to do with the movie, having to do with.
We didn't start talking about Bluetooth.
Yeah, exactly, and then get lost, and that was. Well.
I did write that I like the Robin Williams and Cuba Gooding Jr.'s the way they work off each other. They have a good like back and forth
dynamic. Yeah,
repertoire.
Yeah, I like the dynamic between them.
Very nice.
And so at this point, he's kind of getting more of a hang of of traversing. He's able to run super fast. Like he realizes he can manipulate this existence around him.
Almost like a dream, kind of.
Yep.
And then yes, he's so a little bit after that. We kind of were skipping around because he's in the house. That's when he runs to the house, and then Cuba cuts out the hole, and that's when reality is now actually real. Like, how do I put it?
Well,
it's no longer pain.
Like,
yeah.
So because the entire thing, like, it was funny. At one point, he jumps down where Cuba Gooding Jr. is like standing on water, and he falls into like this pit, and he's just covered in paint. But the idea is the reason why it's all paint, like the trees, the sky, is because he hasn't finished seeing it through yet. And Cuba Gooding Jr.'s character is kind of like, okay, so this is what it looks like completed. And really showing him like this all becomes real when you're ready for it to.
Exactly. I do, and that's a beautiful metaphor, paint drying, it being the thing. It's like it wasn't a finished product when he first got there. Mm-hmm. Like I like that a lot. And so then he's able to traverse through to a different heaven, essentially, to meet with his daughter.
What I would almost consider like, so this is the best way I can interpret it. And I almost feel like in the book, I'm sure they can explain it more, but I feel like everyone has their own kind of personal domain or space.
Yeah.
And then there are like hubs for people to gather entirely.
Really? Because I consider this just the daughter's heaven. Right?
Oh, interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way.
Because remember, she says this is my heaven. And then at first you're kind of like, oh, okay, he's just in some random place. But then once you find out that that's the daughter and that was the diorama they had.
You know, I think you're right about that. But okay, so the funny thing is he doesn't realize he's in his daughter's heaven.
Yeah.
Because again, his daughter died when she was like
11
years old. She was a kid. And he's talking to an adult Asian woman. And this was also a part where I was like, yeah, definitely a late 90s movie.
Yeah, it didn't age quite well.
Like I understood the like the motivation behind it.
It's genuine. It is like,
and I'll say this,
that would happen. You know, like
that's the difference too. It doesn't feel like this is just something that happened in a movie. This sounds like something a father might potentially say to their kid in the 90s. So it was another thing where I'm like, I believe that this is a real conversation, even if it isn't maybe the best conversation.
Yeah, I was going to say, I should clear this up. I don't believe that it could actually happen. I don't think a young girl would turn into an older Asian woman. I should make that clear.
People are getting confused as to, well, what part entirely?
No, it does seem realistic as like, that's probably an offhanded comment a dad would say. And then a daughter... And it actually is a profound statement because I think we don't realize how much our statements can mean to a child, because I've had that with my parents where I'll be like, you remember when you said this when I was like 10? And they're like, what? No. But for me, it's like, it was ingrained in me. And I think that's partly a very like, it's a very nice message where for her, that was such a big thing her dad said, but I'm sure for him, he was like, oh God, I barely remember saying it. And they save it a little bit. I haven't put good save, Robin, because he goes, I didn't mean only Asian women. And she's like, no, I know. There's a bit of a save. There's a bit of a save.
Yeah, they had a little bit of a cop out there. But again, other than that one kind of like little interesting...
Yeah, and I think it was done on purpose for a very beautiful reason. I'm sure the book does it too, but for a movie, it's really well done because that exposition dump that she gives you about heaven and like where he is and this kind of beautiful interactions they're having, if he was having that with a child, I just think it would be silly. It wouldn't, or not even silly, but it wouldn't resonate. Because like having a child be like, look at this beautiful place, isn't it so... You would just be like, shut up. You're 10 years old. You don't know what you're... But having like a very like mature woman give him this walkthrough, it feels right. So it actually works thematically as well, because it's like, oh yeah, that works better than having the child walk him through this world. It would feel silly. Okay, this is when we start getting into... I don't have any notes in between, but basically right when he comes back to his heaven, this is when the wife uh, Minecrafts herself in Minecraft.
She gets done with all the living she was doing.
Yeah, she got tired of the living, which I can't blame her. I'm on my fourth poor woman note at this point. I'm just like, Jesus Christ. Because what fucked me up was the idea that not only was he like not letting go, so it was constantly she would feel him, but then once he's gone, now there's this idea of like, okay, well then where the fuck did you go? Like, you were here with me, and now you're literally just gone. So it's like there was no winning for her. I'm like, oh man, it sucks.
Yeah, she got the shortest end of the shaft.
It's like suicide is never in Minecraft. It's never justified. I'd like to make that very clear. It is never justified. But I think that's why this movie is kind of weird, because they're trying to make you feel like it's as justifiable as possible. Does that make sense? Where it's like, you don't, because like, she did it and it's still a bad thing. You should not commit suicide. But again, she did it in a way where it's like, well, fuck. Like, yeah, I don't know, that it's really hard to blame her. Like that's kind of the angle I'm saying, is like,
and what I think it does well is it shows the complexity of it. It's not just as cut and dry as someone selfish, someone who took too many drugs. It was somebody who was in such a low point. And for so much of the movie, like, she's a very in control person, and this was kind of the thing that began to take away her ability to feel like she even had control over her life anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, again, yeah, it's kind of like I was saying about the agency, like autonomy. She like has none. Just everything keeps being ripped from her. She just can't even, like, they don't, and that's maybe part of the thing I don't like, is they don't even really give her agency in the story. Like, they don't try to give her the chance to get past this. They're just like, nope, she's going to kill herself. Does that make sense?
There is one point, and I think the way they do it at the end does kind of give her that chance of redemption.
Okay, near the end, yeah. But she's already
but
dead.
I will say this.
She already did it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Which does...
And I also I like how they kind of, they don't portray it as, oh, she's being punished by Satan. It's more of, she is holding herself here. Like, she is refusing to accept what happened. So she is what's keeping herself there.
Yeah. Again, that does kind of get messy a little bit, in my opinion, when it comes to the moral kind of thing. Because it's like, does that mean like a rapist can pull himself out of hell if he like really tries hard enough? Like, again, no. I understand that suicide is different. And that's kind of the point I think they're trying to make. But by making that point, you're also kind of leaving the doors open for like, okay, well, are you saying that Christianity's opinion of suicide is wrong? Do you know what I mean? Like, is that the point the movie's trying to make? Is that like the religious angle of suicide being evil, is that wrong? Because that's kind of what the movie's saying.
I think it's saying, when you allow yourself to get to that point, you are no longer in control of anything that happens after that, because you have tied yourself to this permanent decision.
But that's the thing, is it her fault that she got to this low? I mean, like, that's kind of where the messiness of the movie comes in. Like, they're almost trying to blame her for being stuck in her depression, when it's like, well, Robin Williams had it easy. He just got taken out by a tire and didn't have to deal with this. Like, she's the one who actually had to deal with the emotions of this. And like, they're blaming her like it's her fault. And it's like, that's a little weird. I guess that's where it gets a little for me.
Yeah.
But the movie does make a 180 at this point. This is where I was on board.
Yeah.
The trip down to hell is sick. It's a great fucking part of this movie.
Oh, and right before that happens.
Oh,
so, because I don't know if we'd really, while he's talking with his daughter when they're in her heaven, he doesn't realize it's his daughter,
Oh,
till
yeah,
much
yeah, yeah, yeah.
later. And once he does, then he sees his daughter, to kind of go back to that message of once you're ready to accept it, then you'll be able to see your kids, because that was one
Yeah.
of the things that was
I
repeated.
think she
But
does. Does she change back into the Asian woman?
she might, but she at least does turn into the
Yeah,
kid,
yeah, for
and
sure,
and
for
and
sure.
so he sees her for who she was,
Yeah.
and that's when he's like realizing, or Cuba Gooding Jr. comes back, and he's saying, "Hey, I have some news for you," and that's when he tells them about his wife, and Robin Williams is like, "Well, then I'm going to help, or wherever
Yeah.
she's at. Like, I don't care. It's going to happen." And
Yeah.
it was one of those. I think it's funny. We're like, there's no way," and he's like, "All right, there might be a way."
Well,
And
he used his own logic against him because he said there are
yeah,
no rules. He's like, okay, if there
yep,
are no rules, then how is there no way? And again, that's where you kind of leave the iffiness of like, okay, so anybody can pull themselves out of hell, but that's not what the movie's about. That's not the point. So it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
that's not what I'm focusing on. I will say with the daughter part, just as a quick
Mhm.
side note, I didn't like ding it for this, uh, but I did kind of think about the fact that as the puzzle solver in me and the person who likes like subtle fucking things in movies, I kind of wish she didn't turn back into the daughter. I wish that it was left for you to realize it's his daughter,
Oh, I see. Like
and
they never like clearly show it. It's just you would understand that she knows this conversation.
yeah, from their
She's
stories
referencing.
and him saying like, and he even like they hug in the way he says like, I'm so glad to see you. Like, I think making it where it's not obvious, so a few viewers might be like, what's going on? But then it clicks. It's like, oh my God. Like it, I think that would have been more profound than just having the branch go by and then showing that it's the daughter. Because obviously I think for me and you, we caught on before the reveal that it's the daughter, because they kind of
Yeah.
like in the sense that when they're talking in the boat and she starts saying things that are very specific to him,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, that's his daughter.
Like immediately when they first met,
I
I
didn't
had
know.
even forgotten.
Yeah, I didn't know.
But yeah, as they're talking in the boat, I was like, that's right. That's
Hmm.
actually his daughter.
Yeah.
And so from there, that's when we get the conversation where Cuba Gooding Jr. knows that um,
Yes. They go to hell.
she's died. So he tells him. So that's when they go to. I almost want to say like they had a title for him, but there's this older gentleman with this long white
The
beard.
philosopher, essentially.
Yeah, he's like the philosopher, and that's who they're asking about. Where do we need to go? That's when he's kind of warning them of the dangers, and this is where we get. It's implied that they're soulmates, but where it's like soulmate is like a special title. It's
Yes.
like two souls that are always able to find each other, and so he's like, it is possible you might be able to, but also don't lose yourself down there.
Yeah.
And so that's when he chooses, he's like, I will go with you guys on this journey to find her. But he was letting him know she's not going to recognize you. Like, if you're going on this journey, understand now it's so you can say your final goodbyes, but that's probably going to be it.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think the movie is very clearly, especially the second half. And again, I'm getting into more of like the theological stuff. It's rooted in like Greek mythology. It almost abandons Christianity and Catholicism completely for Greek mythology,
Hmm.
because the idea of soulmates doesn't exist in Christianity or Catholicism. Like,
Yeah, I don't think I've ever learned that in like any of my studies about like, oh, be on your lookout for your soulmate. They'll probably be
no.
Catholic. Like,
Yeah, like I think there is a belief that someone can guide you towards a greater existence or some shit like that in the Bible, but there is no outright soulmate.
yeah.
So that again threw me off a little bit. I was like, wait, is this? So like as it dived deeper, I was like, oh, this is. I feel like this was meant to be a Greek Odyssey like tale, but they were afraid that Catholics and Christians watching it in the 90s would be like, that's not how God works, and get pissed
I
off.
mean,
So
they're
they
not
had,
entirely wrong about that.
yeah, so it's like I kind of see it. So then they traverse. So they finally agree. He says, "I'm going to do it," and he's like, "Okay,
Yep.
then we're coming with you."
Yep.
Um, and they go to the second layer, which is kind of for them when they go down through this area. It's like a big ocean, right? And they're on a boat.
Yeah, which again, I love the imagery. It looked really cool the way they did it.
The fucking, especially the bodies under the water. It's very dark and again, I think that's supposed to be the River Styx, like a resemblance of the River Styx entrance.
I kind of picked up on that.
But also the second layer of hell in Dante's Inferno is people's souls stuck in a windswept of storm. So you have the storm symbology. So then, they wash up on the shore, and I loved, the boat getting pulled out. Like, that was scary. Like, that's, like, genuinely horrifying.
I was just, like, that's where you could tell, like, the director definitely did horror movies, because, not that he made it feel like, well, this is a horror movie all of a sudden, but the movie, for having, like, really heavy scenes, this became, like, a much darker...
Yeah, for sure. The tone shifted.
I would say it's like, oh, this is death.
Yeah. It was, like, and I liked that balance of feeling like they were almost too safe in the heaven area, and now it's like, whoa, this is the other side. It really
shows the difference. It's like not all of this is just peace and happiness.
Yeah, and they end up on the third layer now, which is kind of this fiery hellscape, which is actually, and this is where I started to think, like, okay, maybe it's not a direct tie to Dante's Inferno. Maybe they were just making a cute little thing, because there's nothing about like burning ships and stuff like that in it. But the third layer is the gates of hell being blocked by the three-headed dog Cerberus. And what was the name of the ship that they walk up to? Cerberus. And I was like, oh, nope, we're 100% leaning into that. So I was like, here we go. I will say the green screen at this part is a little... That's the one part.
Yeah.
But there is a good reveal here at this part, though.
Dude, that reveal... broke me. I was tearing up so much. So the reveal is that Cuba Gooding Jr.'s character is not the doctor that he had looked up to. And the thing that like in the flashback, and this is why I like the way they did the flashbacks, because I think they hit when they needed to. He says to his son, like in a flashback, is, if I was ever going to go through hell, you're the person I'd want to go through hell with.
That's when it started.
I'd want right by my side, and I was like, God,
because that comes up before the reveal. So it's like, wait, hold on a second. That's a really nice twist. I didn't see either of the child twists coming until the moments before when they're hinting at it.
Yeah,
you know
like
what I mean?
After they give you, and I was actually surprised. I'm like, I haven't seen this movie in years. And that still got me on both occasions, which I think plays into the writing. Like, you can't pull that off if you don't have quality writing to make you feel like, oh, this makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think at that point, too, the son had gotten so emotionally invested into this, he was ready to just charge into hell. And that's when his dad had to say, stop,
and
let
again,
me go.
Yeah, yes. And again, it was almost focused more on the father's, Robin Williams, his intentions. His intentions were kind of driving everything, because once he stopped focusing on his wife, that's when his son started to kind of go erratic and like, I'll just charge in. And it's like he had to be reminded of the mission and like the focus. So yeah, it's very interesting, that theme of like him creating that reality in a sense, like, continues. So, this is just a stupid little comment, but it's just something in 90s movies I don't like now, is the choppy slow motion, where it's like they clearly...
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, they didn't have a camera with high frame rate to slow something down, so instead it's like a choppy, like, as somene's falling.
Yeah, it did not look... It looked very 90s, like realistically.
I don't remember. I wrote, I like the logic, but the sentiment is a little messy. Oh, wait, no, the logic is messy, but I like the sentiment. I don't even know what that's about. So we're just going to move past that. That's the ending. That's right. I was pretty much invested by this point. I didn't even make notes from here on out, because I was actually like pretty invested throughout the rest of the story.
My other notes was third time tears for the dying tree, fourth time for him and his daughter embracing, fifth time, him learning his wife died. Um, oh, the other thing that I had noticed about this that I was like, I don't want to like harp on it because I think it was maybe just what they had at the time was
Bring it on.
you could tell by the way everyone was floating.
Yeah.
Like they were all in like the kind
the
of like
strings.
Yeah, the kind of theater strings. Like it was
Peter
very
Pan,
much like exact. I very much got like the Robin Williams Peter Pan vibes
oh
from
wow, yeah,
a
Pan.
lot of those scenes.
Yeah, you're right. Wow. That's great. Hook. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I did notice that too. I didn't note it down, but that was something where I was like, it's a product of its time, but it does look a little bad.
Yeah,
like,
if that came out in a movie today, I would harp on it a little bit more.
Yeah.
But for when this movie came out, like I don't entirely blame it for it looking that way, I guess if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, so so he descends on this kind of like you call it like an elevator thing through the hells. And
yeah.
This is where they kind of skip through, and I know people probably don't care, but I care. When I was watching, I noticed they skipped through a couple layers, but they did make sure to like point them out because I believe like the 5th layer of hell is like burning tombs, and you can actually see like tombs burning in the background as he's descending, and it's like, oh shit, okay, so there's that layer. Like they're actually defining like each layer of hell, and so then do they get to the bottom with the frozen faces? Are we at this point? I know there's been few flashbacks kind of in between, but I don't think they were necessarily like... Not that they weren't important, but I'm trying to think of what happened in between that.
I thought the faces was something that happened. No, he's walking over the faces as he's trying to get to where he feels that she's at, because then he falls through the floor. That's right.
And what was up with he saw his dad? What?
No, because I think he even says, "You're not my dad." Like I think he was starting to get distracted.
Maybe, yeah.
Because then like the head. Did I ever take a note about that? Says something like,
they never come. Yeah. What does that mean? What is that?
I think he was trying to get someone to stay with him
or trick him into pulling him out or something. Yeah. I wish it was his dad. I know that sounds fucked up, but I like that twist of being like, oh, fuck dad. Because even though we've never met his dad, we know nothing about his dad, it would still be an interesting gut punch to be like, oh, fuck, I've never thought about, like, the possibility of my parents not joining me in heaven. Like, where is his dad? So I kind of almost wish that was, but they might be. I don't really know what the movie was trying to do there. But it did feel like a distraction, for sure. Yeah. But he does spot his wife off in the distance and goes over to her, and when he reaches for her, the whole floor like collapses as he gets to her. And they end up in like the very bottom of like this almost like upside down cathedral kind of looking thing.
Which I loved the scene set for that.
I think it's literally an upside down church, which if you imagine heaven being a church and then the reflection of hell, the very bottom would be an upside down church. So it's like symbolically, it's like very cool. Yeah, it's almost anime. Like I could imagine like hell being an upside down church in an anime.
I can absolutely see that.
So yeah, this is where he's kind of has to convince her to come out, right? Like, and the guide he was with, that's when there's a third reveal, which I can't believe they actually got away with a third reveal.
3 times, and all the times I was just like, I didn't see that coming. Like, I genuinely, and I've seen this movie before. So the third reveal is the philosopher that's taken him down this path is Doc, is the guy that his son was pretending to be.
Wearing whiteface.
Man.
Yeah, so we had the son wearing blackface, and we had...
Which you got to admit, for a movie to be this old, to pull off 3... Because again, this is a great twist. It's not trying to change the ending. It wasn't what you actually thought. It was something that you were following along with the movie. You were getting small hints throughout.
Yeah, it makes the relationships poignant. It actually, like, now we understand what this philosopher means to this guy. Like, why does, Yeah, it was that reveal. I almost was mad at that point. I'm just like, really?
Because you're like,
Again?
you got me right. Like you're just like, I'm feeling bad about
Like, just
myself at this
stop.
point.
Just stop now. Like, it's like,
You
but
won. We get it.
okay. So he goes in and he's kind of told he only has so much time, right?
Yep.
He has got to get in or he'll be sucked into her sadness.
Yeah,
Whatnot.
and he'll lose himself as well.
And this is where the movie, I think, starts to me, like, it had such a strong middle, and so it was really, but then once it hits this scene of their interaction, while it is very beautiful, I think how it concluded felt like ham-fisted to me. I know that I have a certain opinion when it comes to how certain stories end and like how I like things to end and things like that. Everybody has their own opinion on that. But I think I don't like how happy it ends. It's almost like too much of like everything working out, you know?
Okay, I can see that. So the way I took away from the ending and what I kind of saw from doing a little research was the idea is the reason why, and it's I guess we actually hadn't talked about this. They were actually going to get a divorce at one point, and the reason why is
Oh yeah,
he
that's right. This is a
she
good
broke
backstory.
down. Yeah,
Yeah.
she broke down. She had a mental breakdown. Was again in I think like a psychiatric ward or something like that. And he was fine. And he was like, well, I had to stay strong. I had to keep us going. As we were actually seeing back flashbacks, we were seeing that he wasn't always the best husband. Like he definitely had flaws. Like he
Yeah.
wasn't
But he
perfect.
was also going through grief. It's how
But yeah,
he
he was
dealt
going
with
through
his
grief,
grief.
and so he was like, "Well, I can't let that consume me." Where she let it, and so at the very end, he realizes there is nothing I can say to convince her to come back, and this is the first time he fully just breaks down in front of her, where he feels like now I know what she's gone through to
Yeah.
not have anyone, to not have anything, to have lost it all. And the idea is that was her chance to redeem herself by finally being able to take control and was able to save him.
Hmm. Okay. I get
So
okay.
kind of the idea is
Yeah, like because once he's
she
lost, yeah,
yeah,
she
once he's
snaps
lost,
out of it.
then her yeah, because she had to then save him, and
Yeah.
in doing so, it kind of gave them both that
He,
chance.
so I do appreciate that, but I think the thing, I don't know, maybe it's just my dire outlook on life, of course, but I I really liked how I thought it was going to end, where Robin Williams kind of comes to a reckoning where he realizes that grief is okay. And he said, like, your version of grief was okay. And us forcing you to not be in that form of grief was what was hurting
Yep.
you even more. And me pretending everything was okay was my version of grieving. And I think that revelation is really beautiful, but then I think the problem is the movie kind of backtracks on that by going like, no, pull yourself out. Everything's going to be okay. Because I kind of felt like the message leading up to this was almost going to be that don't give up is a hollow point. Like, don't give up is not a good message for somebody. You know, it really
Yeah.
doesn't do anything. It doesn't say anything. It doesn't mean anything. Like, because even like they hint at it with the son being like, remember what you told mom and tell her again, get her out of it. And then it's almost kind of insinuated when he remembers what it is he said to her that it's like really not that special. He just says like, yeah, don't give up, you know? And then he almost is like, oh, I'm just supposed to say don't give up. Like he doesn't say that outright, but you can kind of tell his character's like,
Yeah.
that's all
Yeah.
I
Like
said.
that's really that's it.
And that's, I thought was going to be the point that that's not good enough. This woman went through so much that it's not giving up sometimes is not what like helps, you know? And, but then the movie kind of goes, no, it is, because then she snaps out of it, pulls him out of it. And then they are able to kind of pull themselves at the last moment before the collapse back into heaven. And it does have a beautiful end, you know, like that's where I was saying that I think the sentiment is really beautiful, but it's like the logic it's building up and the message it's trying to send necessarily gets lost with me a little bit.
That's fair. I think that's a fair assessment. I will allow it.
Yeah, and then the reincarnation thing, I don't know. How did you feel about that?
It was the only part where I felt if they didn't have it, it didn't add or take away from the movie. It felt like a very movie ending. I think that is what, because again, this whole movie I thought was an incredible story, but I do think kind of giving them, oh, you guys just go ahead, just go for it again. Which, I mean, I don't know. Again, it just felt like they just wanted to have like the happy ending where they'll get back together again and they're gonna do it right this time.
Yeah, and I think it's the kids that make it messy. Is it maybe trying to reinforce the idea that like having love and loss is better than not having love at all? Where it's like the kids, they don't have to be reincarnated. They didn't even experience enough of life or love to really appreciate it. Or like, why did the kids not reincarnate? That's the only part that I don't understand. Like, why would it made it messy because they're all the same age? Choice. Like, I guess
I think it was to show like they like going through this cycle of finding each other, because even like I think because the kid, at least like the son, right? He found a role in heaven where he was helping being a guide to people. Oh, I thought that was sweet.
Oh, well, I forgot. I did have a note about that. I did say what was it? There's work in heaven still? Jesus Christ, not even in death I can get a fucking break. Like, I love
that. Was pretty funny.
All right, yeah. Again, like this is in its core like a really beautiful movie. I think like the narrative, Robin Williams acting, the effects, its take on heaven and hell is very interesting. I think where it loses me is just the message. Like it gets bogged down in like philosophical and theological messages that conflict with each other that I can't help but like rack my brain over, where I'm like, well, you're taking from this religion which believes this, but then you're taking this religion which believes this, and then they can't really coexist. Like, because you can't have a heaven and hell that treats people like afterlife, you're judged and then brought into a heaven and hell. There can't also be reincarnation, because then why didn't you just put the people who commit suicide through a cycle to let them learn again? Like it's like where it's like, why would there also be reincarnation but you're sectioned off into your afterlife of beliefs? Like, that doesn't really make sense.
I'll say, to play devil's advocate, like it's just the afterlife. Like, I think the idea is that like nobody has maybe that one right religion.
There's no answer.
Because I will say a lot of your point is based on assuming this is trying to stick specifically to the Judeo-Christianity, just because heaven and hell are mentioned. I think because it's a movie, it's its own story, at no point did they specifically say, you know, this is Christian or this is Catholic, this is Russian Orthodox. Because of that, it maybe there's one that we don't even know about, that this is actually like, oh, this follows this one branch off of this very specifically. Yeah.
Cope all you want, buddy. That may have been the director's, what he was trying to say is like, you're all kind of right. You know, like there's that kind of take.
Yeah.
But I don't think it did it well enough for me to feel like that was the message. It just kind of felt like messy, you know? Yeah. Again, like, I don't want to take away from anybody's enjoyment from it or anything like that. It was just mainly for me, it was like, I couldn't help but question the rules of the universe. Yeah.
That's fair. I think I can understand that.
All right. Do you want to give our final ratings here?
Yes. Let's go ahead and throw that out there.
All right. So I think I would bump it up to like a 7. I think it's a 7 out of 10. Like, it is a very nice, like, upon reflection, I appreciate more of it. It was just, there were just parts of it that made me feel a little bit like, I'm confused.
And I think that's fair.
All right, what are you landing on?
I'm gonna finish on a 9.
Okay.
I think while maybe there's little things that could have been maybe done a little smoother. For how old this movie is, the amount of twists that it still got me with, I think it's a solid 9 for me.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I think I've actually noticed a similar discourse online. It's interesting. The audience score for this on Rotten Tomatoes is like an 80-something%, I believe, or like high 70s, something like that. But the Rotten Tomatoes Metacritic or the critic score, like their official critics, it has like a 30% or some shit like that. Yeah, like, and what? I think it's because there were people like me to an nth degree where there seemed to be a lot of people
they couldn't let those things go.
Yeah, they couldn't let the philosophical, theological, religious kind of aspects of it go. They seemed very honed in on that being the major issue of the movie, which for me, it was a big problem, but there was enough of a story behind it and a message that I can look past some of that. So yeah, it was interesting seeing the wide range on there. But all right. So those are our ratings for What Dreams May Come. Good suggestion. I'm glad I finally got to watch it. Yeah.
I appreciate it.
It also, I like these movies that make us think and talk a little deeper beyond just the scenes in the movie, No,
I think this is a really fun rewatch. I enjoyed it.
Hell yeah. All right, let's wrap this up here because I know you got to get some stuff done. I have a suggestion for you, and
okay, lay it on me.
I wasn't going to right away, but it's still pretty fresh, so maybe we can get some free clicks out of it. And I can't think of another movie right now anyway, and I can't find my list. So we're gonna watch Netflix's brand new Orion in the Dark. It is a kids movie, technically. Animated film.
Orion, like the star?
Yes, Orion, one word. And the Dark. It was written by Charlie Kaufman, the same guy who wrote Eternal Sunshine that we reviewed before.
Yep.
So this will be interesting. All right. So if you don't want to be spoiled for Orion and the Dark, make sure to watch it before next week's episode. We release these Media Club episodes every Thursday. So make sure to watch it or join our Discord, join our Patreon, join our Reddit. Drop us some questions.
We'd love to have you here.
Yeah, drop some movie suggestions, things you love, things you hate. We want to know. We need to know. But all right, guys, we'll see you in the next episode.
No. Bye-bye.